Date. right. Hello there, everyone. Hope everyone's doing well. Everything's going okay. We'll get started in just a minute. We got a few more people logging on here. So just to start, does anyone have any questions, concerns about anything? I'm not sure if you guys saw, but we will have that little mini assignment due on Monday, which is just some of your thumbnail sketches. Hopefully you guys saw that in Canvas. I was wondering, do you guys get any sorts of alerts or updates from Canvas when a new assignment's added, or like when we're getting close to a due date for an assignment? Does Canvas let you know at all anyway? Sean, you say you just had to check there. Okay. Okay. So it looks like you guys just had to. So would it, I get a notification when you grade an assignment? Okay. It sounds like a few people are getting an update. So did anyone see that new assignment that I added yesterday by chance in Canvas? Jack, it's okay. Madison saw it and more. Okay, so you guys can put those on your own settings, Danelia, to see if you get those, but sometimes it's delayed. Okay. So it sounds like it's kind of a mixed bag. So would it probably be good for me to message the class when I add a new assignment there, and then you guys would get alerted to it that way? That'd probably be a good idea. Yes. Okay. Cool. Well, I'll do that as well in case people aren't here. But I'll tell you guys now that there is that new assignment in there. So go ahead and look at that. But I'm going to add those from time to time. But I'll use it, and they'll each just be 5 to 10 points, just little. So it won't be a huge chunk of your grade, but that will be part of the participation grade for the class. Is just participating in those little critique assignments. So we will have those throughout the rest of the quarter. I think this will be a good way to do it. I'm still kind of feeling it out. So we'll go from there and kind of see how this first one goes. But I think that'll be a good way to do it, where I just add those small assignments for 5 to 10 points. So it will add up. There will be probably 5 or 6 of them throughout the quarter, but it won't be a huge portion of your grade. But it is still good to do those, and it will help you guys get feedback on your work, and it will make your final projects better. Okay. Just a sec. I'll step away for just a sec here. All right. So yeah, make sure you guys check that out. We'll be doing that on Monday. So you can sketch and upload those over the weekend as like your little weekend assignment. So you'll sketch them in your sketchbook, and then you'll just take a picture of them with your phone. So some tips for doing that. I'll try and upload a video with this about this as well. But when you're photographing anything from your sketchbook, be in a room that has good light, but you don't want light directly on your artwork. And hold your phone a little bit further away from your sketchbook. So I would say hold it probably 3 or 4 feet above your sketchbook, and then take a photograph there and then crop it afterwards. Okay. So I'll try and put a video up for how to do that, just to make sure your drawings are looking okay. But I want to be able to see your work before you turn it in. So that's just me being able to see your sketches before that. Okay. Any questions or concerns about that? Jocelyn, are you on a Mac or a PC by chance? PC. Let me check something really quick. Because there are other ways to get images into Illustrator. So let's just see here. That's just the main way I use. I worked like that on PCs at school when I would use the school computers. So we'll see here. I think for the entire assignment, it's 15. So you don't need to have all 15 done for Monday. As long as you have, I'd say 8 to 10 done, that would be good. Really, your grade for that's just going to be participating in some way. I'm not going to be like grading the quality of them or like seeing that you have everything all the way done. As long as you're participating and showing me some work ahead of time. But yeah, I would say probably around 10 would be good. And then you can add a few more to your sketches after you get the critiques and feedback. All right, Jocelyn, I'm here just trying to see. So it doesn't let you take this image file here and just drag and drop it on there, correct? That does not work. So let's see. Have you tried any of these other ways? File. File open. What happens if I do that? So I just did file open. So I just did file open and it opened this here. This was the original file I had open and it just opened a brand new file here. Or a brand new document. So you can try file open. Now this is saying in its own document, but even if I want it to be over in that one, let's see, kind of Control C, Control V. So I would say try that file open. And then once you do that, you can take this file and you can copy and paste it into another document if you would like to do that. So Jocelyn, try that after class. If that still doesn't work, send me a message and we'll try and get it figured out, okay? Cool. But yeah, that's weird because that's always worked for me on Mac or PC to drag and drop it in there. And you said it works on Photoshop. So I'm just wondering if there's some sort of setting. I'll see if there's any sort of setting that allows that or not. But try that file open for now and see if that can work to get you going there. Alrighty. So today we're going to talk about the rule of thirds. So last class we were talking about focal points and leading lines, correct? So today we'll talk about the rule of thirds. So that focal point and leading lines is all about having that clear focal point, making sure your focal point stands out, making sure it's very obvious to the viewer. So these are things that you should be working on in your own thumbnails as you work on those. So as you're working on those thumbnails, these are the things we're going over the last class and today is what you want to be focusing on for getting those good compositions. So we're always going to start with that focal point, but sometimes you want to wonder, think about where am I going to put that focal point in my composition? So where's a good place to put that focal point? so it will stand out, so it will create a good overall composition. And these are just some compositional rules that basically give you tips and ideas of where to put focal points, okay? So those are all different ways just to place focal points in there and to place other supporting elements in your composition as well. So this is the rule of thirds here. So it's just a very simple, has anyone ever seen this before in art or photography or anything like that? Madison's seen it. So you guys have probably also seen it on, yeah, and it's used in photography a lot, in cinematography for movies. You probably notice on your phone app or on your camera app on your phone, there's a grid that looks something like this on your phone to help you guys with photography just when you're taking pictures with your phone. But it's just this simple grid system here. And basically these intersection points, good, most of you guys have heard of it, are telling you where to put your focal point. So it's saying to put your focal point on any of those intersections, and that will kind of help as a good way to start with a composition, and it will help you to design the rest of your overall composition well. And it basically helps us avoid symmetrical compositions. There's times where you want to use symmetrical compositions, but oftentimes that's kind of what we are fighting against, so creating something that's not symmetrical. Okay, so when you deal with a symmetrical composition, you'll go ahead and put your focal point right here smack dab in the middle. So this is kind of what happens when you give a little kid a camera and you say, take a picture of this person, of this thing, whatever it may be. They will go and put that focal point right there in the middle. And this is fine for some reason, or some compositions, but for the most part, it creates kind of a boring composition. It's very static. It creates very even negative space around your focal point. That's less interesting. So if you were to do that with the rule of thirds, you could put the focal point of that person's face on any one of those thirds. So I could put it up here. So now we have a little bit more space here around our focal point, where we can put other sorts of shapes in there, other elements, and it just kind of spaces out the composition in a nicer way. I could put more people here, whatever it may be. And my focal point is still here on that third. So it's right here on this third, starting right on that little intersection point. So you can do this for abstract or representational compositions, okay? All right. So as we talked about last class, I think we mentioned that you have the option of doing abstract or representational for the next project. I would suggest trying a little bit of both, seeing kind of what you like better, what may be easier, and then you can kind of judge from there. We also discussed you can do any sort of simple shape for your focal point, any shape kind of like any of these. So again, thinking about where do I want that to go, another thing rule of thirds does is help you avoid the edges and corners. Okay, so anything important in your composition, you do not want it along the edge, okay? So let's just take this shape here. Let's put it on one of those. Yeah, I thought I went in and changed that even on Canvas, Jocelyn. Yeah, I think I went in and changed that. I might have missed your guys' class. But yeah, it did used to say that. Hopefully, I'll double check it today. But yeah, you have the option for either or. So really just do whatever comes more comfortably for you. So there, I put that guy right on that third. So this is kind of the steps you'll take as you're sketching that your thumbnails. To decide on a focal point, maybe I want some leading lines coming to it all the way from this side. Maybe we have some shapes here that repeat and lead down to it. We have some angular shapes here that kind of act like arrows and point our vision up there. And then you'll usually want to get some other values in there. So you want your focal point to be that darkest value, which it is. But you're also going to want a range of other values in there. So mostly you'll get a bright white shape, a solid black shape. The bright white might just be the background. And then everything else would kind of just be medium, different shades of that light gray. Okay. So I mean, you in each composition that you do doesn't have to be dramatically different. I can use the same shape. Maybe I put it down on this little third and maybe I make it a little bit bigger. So you can see that's basically the same shape there, and I can use some of these same elements. Shape there. This shape is basically the same. Repeat some of these rectangles. Maybe I have some leading lines, and maybe they're coming up here from the corner this time. And my circle pattern coming down from the bottom this time. Okay. And then I would go in and fill in values kind of the same way. It all started with me putting it right there on that third, keeping it away from the corner, adding simple shapes, adding leading lines, and adding values to it. So these are obviously all abstract ones. Let's try a representational one. And these rule of thirds really, they don't need to be like, perfectly measured and divided. It's really just a general guideline for helping you get better compositions. Let's go back. Let's do a sailboat example here. So if I want this sailboat to be my focal point, again, I can choose any one of these thirds. So let's put it down on this third here. Okay. And another good thing to use the thirds for is adding in the horizon line. So if you ever have, so where the sky meets the land or where sky meets water, it's really good to put that on a third. If you put it on a half, it can often look awkward and kind of just look like your composition is a piece of paper folded right in half. So I'll put that horizon line right there. I'll turn this into a little spit of land up here. Okay, so this is a pretty nicely spaced composition. The water has 2/3, the sky has 1/3, so that's a good division. I had the focal point of my boat there on a third. If I add in other elements like a sun, I can think about adding that on a third, but again, this is a less important shape, so it can be near the edge. Clouds are less important and they can be in the corners. Maybe I put a little bit of land here in that foreground too. That can be a good way to divide it all up. I can put some like streaks through the water to act as leading lines. And we got a pretty nice composition there. But what if I wanted my boat to be up here? So I could also put it on a third up here. So these count as different varieties of thumbnails. because it's just arranging the different elements of that composition in different ways, just slightly different ways. We'll still put the horizon out there. So this has a slightly different feel to it because now the boat is overlapping that the land and the horizon up there, which maybe is, I kind of like that. We'll still use some sun and clouds in there. But now this one, I have a little bit more room down here for some of these rocks and land in the foreground. So it changes the feel of the composition. And you will have to know, you're not going to know which one works better until you sketch it out, okay? And then this symmetrical one, so maybe here, it's gonna have a very different feel with symmetrical. So it already feels a little awkward because I'm dividing it right in half. So there would be that symmetrical composition. So there are times where you want to use that symmetrical composition. It kind of has some inherent meanings and emotional feelings that it gives the viewer. So it'll feel more staged. So this doesn't necessarily feel like I just went out and found this moment. It's kind of staged. Everything's very even. Has a religious or political feel. If you ever want to evoke any of these feelings, you can use a symmetrical composition. That's just kind of because similar to the buildings that are used, churches are usually designed in a very symmetrical way, and our political buildings, think the White House, the Capitol building, are also very symmetrical. So I'll show you some examples of that. But one of these, none of these are necessarily better than the other. But you have to sketch them out and see what will work better for one of your purposes, okay? The only way to see if they're working is to sketch them out as a thumbnail. Spend a few minutes getting those all planned out that way, and then you can see which one will work best for a given project. All right, any questions about any of this so far? Is making sense? Sounds like most of you guys have seen the rule of thirds somewhere. So we'll look at some examples in a sec. But another thing to get some variety in your thumbnails is using that rule of thirds, but also just changing the size of your focal point too. So I find that as another really good way to get variety. So maybe here we'll stick with that same sailboat shape. But I'm gonna draw my sailboat super big. I still want it to be on that third. So just changing the size of that thing will definitely change the way your composition feels. So now we got a very, very large shape for this. I'm still starting with it going on that third. Still gonna make this the darkest shape in my composition. And now this is automatically getting a lot more attention just because it's big. I'll still throw in the horizon back here on that third. And again, not one of these options that I sketched out is necessarily better or worse, but ones may work better for a certain composition. So here now, this one I don't really have space to put in the land here quite as much. It would feel a little more crowded, which is okay. I may or may not want that, but that is kind of one of the differences there. I could add in some other little sailboats here in the background, and because they are not as important in my composition, they can be near the edge or the corner of the composition as well. Add in some leading lines with some clouds. Some kind of ripples on the waters, leading lines also. Okay, so changing which third you're placing your focal point on, changing the size of the focal point, and mixing it up, trying some symmetrical and some using the rule of thirds. It's going to be a good way, and kind of what we're doing for the rest of the class to get different options for the rule of thirds, and for different options for our thumbnails for class. Any questions on anything here? Anyone need any more examples or anything? Okay. So let's look at some other artists that use rule of thirds. All right. So people seen The Incredibles? People seen that movie? So I found a really cool blog a while ago that breaks down a whole bunch of different art concepts just using The Incredibles as examples. So this one, I took all their images showing how they use the rule of thirds from The Incredibles. So here we go. This is a very, very simple composition. This is about as simple as you can get. It's just one major shape. The focal point is the face of this character. So they had a decision about where to place that character within the composition, where to place the focal point. And they decided just to put it on that third there. So that is a really nice way to do that. You then get all this negative space around the character. So that is all this space around here. Which becomes a nice shape in and of itself. So we'll talk more about negative space as the quarter goes on, but it's basically any space that's not the focal point. So this is a nice bit of negative space around there. It gives his eyesight line room. So his eyesight line is really that kind of that implied line that's actually invisible. But if this was cropped a different way here, back this way, you'd feel very cramped in that composition because his eyesight line wouldn't have any room. Okay, so now he would feel sort of cramped there. He's crammed in along that edge, so it's better to put him along that third so his eyesight line has some room. So that looks a lot more natural there. Let's see a couple other ones. So here they just add in same scene from the movie, but they add in another character. So again, most of the time we will be dealing with one focal point for most of the projects you guys are doing. Eventually, as we get later in the quarter, we might have more than one focal point, but we'll have one for the most part. But here they have two. So they just put each one of those on one of the thirds. If you do have two, it's nice to have that diagonal relationship between the two focal points. So same idea here for this one. Again, one main focal point of the character. Her face is right on that third. They're giving her eyesight line space through the larger 2/3 of the composition. And when you put this character on a third, it just allows this space here. Here we saw the negative space in this one. But this just allows more space for background elements, different things within the composition. And especially it's good to use these guidelines when you get to more complicated compositions. So this one is a pretty busy composition. There's a lot going on. We have a primary focal point, a secondary focal point, a bunch of background shapes in there. So using that rule of thirds is just a really good way to organize that composition, make sure everything's going to fit in there and that it's reading clearly. So we have the two, Dash and his sister, I forget her name. They're on the third here. So they're our main focal point. So they're doing a number of things to get them to stand out. For the color of their costumes is bright red against green. They put them right here on this third. They kind of create a frame around them with all these plants. So if you see that, we'll talk about framing the focal point also down the road. They're doing that. Then they have the secondary focal point of the bird on the other third. So the two focal points, and then they're able to fill in the rest of the composition with all of those plant shapes and things like that. So here's another nice one. This is by the artist Howard Pyle, an illustrator. So again, a very relatively simple composition. There's not much here. There's a focal point, and then a few supporting shapes that are kind of acting as leading lines. But then this is an example with that horizon line. So putting that horizon line right there on that third. So then we have 2/3 down here of land and 1/3 of sky. So this is a nice way to divide up that composition. And it works again for those seemingly simple compositions, but this is just a good way to get everything divided nicely within a composition. And here's one that does kind of the opposite. Oh, let me open it in Photoshop. So this one, we have the horizon line down here on this third, okay? So, oops. So here we have 2/3 of sky and just 1/3 of land. So again, that is just another way to divide up the composition. You have the artist, you have to decide, do I want the sky to dominate this or do I want the land to dominate this composition? And different pieces of art will have different purposes and different needs. But a nice clear focal point here, right on that third. Pretty much just a simple shape for that house, but a good silhouette for that. As we've talked about, then that you can fill in all these other shapes here. So I'm not sure the artist of this piece here, but it's a really just well-designed piece with a bunch of simple shapes, clear silhouette for the focal point, and things like that. Now so we talked about the symmetrical ones. So there is our Capitol building here. It's a very symmetrical design. If you want to evoke any sort of feelings like that, you can do that with a symmetrical design. So here's one that uses a symmetrical design for that specific reason. So a Captain America cover here. So this feels kind of staged. This isn't like an actual event from the story or from the comic. It's staged just for the cover. We see some architectural elements, which are similar things used in some of those government buildings. And everything's divided right down the middle, but it gives us that political feel to it because that matches the story and the character there. Okay. So why don't we do some drawing here? So we'll do a couple drawings here, and we will try a version of a composition with the rule of thirds and a version with a symmetrical composition. So give yourself 2 frames in your sketchbook. And then just lightly sketch on one of them, sketch guidelines for the rule of thirds and one sketch guidelines for symmetrical. Okay, so I'm gonna give you guys a bunch of different elements to fill this in with. And it will be the same elements in both of these, but then you have to just create 2 different versions of the composition. So we'll kind of create a scene out in the open, maybe in like the country type place. So we got an old little house here. We will have a character. Then just, so first you should decide which one of these shapes you want to be the focal point. So we'll get truck in here as well. So then I would say probably the house or the person. You could do the truck as well. Abraham, that's up to you. So he asked if you should draw the lines on every sketch or on every thumbnail you're doing, or if you should just imagine them. I'd say probably start out actually drawing those lines on there. And then the more you do, you'll eventually be able to just kind of imagine them. But I'm not going to be like requiring them for the project that you have to have those lines on there. As long as you're getting close to those different compositional elements, whether you use the lines or not, that's what I just want to see, that you're trying some symmetrical ones and some rule of third ones. All right, so here are just some more elements that you can use to fill up the composition with. Clouds, tree, sun or moon, some hills in the background. Maybe you got a fence in there. You have a path. Okay. Maybe you have a telephone pole. Yeah, Casey, why don't you try to make the focal point the same? So now you guys can start that sketching. I'll have you guys turn on your cameras in a few minutes after we're done. So choose one of these to be the focal point. Probably house, car, person would be best. And start and place them on one of these thirds. And if you're doing the symmetrical one, place that focal point there in the middle. And then build the rest of the composition around that, okay? So we'll do this for 5-10 minutes or so. I'll kind of just get started here, and then I'll keep sketching if you need some ideas or guidelines. So I'm just going to use the house here as my main focal point. Just put it on that third there. And this one, I'll put it right there in the middle. So you can use this to get started, or choose your own shape there to be a focal point and start with. So again, we'll do this for 5-10 minutes, and we'll see what you guys come up with. And you don't have to use all of these elements. You can just use some of them or add your own as well. I just kind of want you using the same elements in both of these compositions to see the variety that you can get. Does anyone else have questions before you start drawing? Just let me know. So you guys can do this for your thumbnails for the project if you would like. You can give yourself a bunch of different elements, either abstract or representational, and just kind of repeat them in different varieties, move them around to different different thirds, try symmetrical, try rule of thirds, and just get a variety, even if you're kind of repeating those similar elements over and over again. I like using wires a lot in compositions because they can very easily act as leading lines. Less important stuff. So here I'm adding in this truck in the foreground kind of, but it's not an important shape. It's not my focal point. So it can be near the edge of this composition. This is just the best way to practice with these, just giving yourself little mini challenges. But this is basically the same process you'll use for that thumbnails for the next project. Okay, and once I have most of the shapes in there, and then remember, add some of those different values. So darkest values on the focal point, and then medium values kind of over everything else. And again, there is many, many more versions I could come up with for these two possibilities. These are just kind of the two to start with. If I was to do this for either a different project, I would want to go and see how many different versions I could come up with, and then see which one would be the best to take to a finish. So depending on what medium you're drawing with, it might be a little harder to add in some of that value. If you're drawing with pencil, you can get that full range of value in there a little bit easier than if you're drawing with pen. If you're drawing with pen, you might have to do some hatching techniques, so I can just fill it up like this, and repeating these lines will basically build it up and kind of give it a value. All right, so give it another minute, add anything else you want to on one of those, and we'll take a look at it. All right, let's see what you guys have. Why don't you turn on your cameras, put your sketch up to it, see what you guys came up with. Nice, Madison, that looks good. I like making that truck really big, even though it's not necessarily the focal point. Okay. And yeah, nice symmetrical one there. So that you're kind of framing the focal point there with the sun behind the dark truck. That can be a good way to do it. Jessica, those look good. So yeah, that path is a nice leading line directly from the guy to the house. Did you put the house on fire there, Jessica? Good, you added some story to it. Added some story. So that's good. Anytime you guys can add anything to any of these little exercises, that's always good to make it a little bit more interesting. Nice, that one looks good. See, that pin is able to get a really dark, strong focal point. The name just disappeared on this one. With the fence there in the foreground, that's also a nice way to do it. And that fence is those are kind of leading lines going up to the focal point too. So that's good to try that. And yeah, you're able to get it nice and dark. Julia, those look good. Julia, those darkest shapes of the roof is a really good way to have that stand out. Just knowing that that roof of the house is going to be dark, that's drawing my eye in both the symmetrical and the rule of thirds one. Nice. This one looks good. It looks like some gray marker. The name disappeared on here again, but some gray marker added in along with some of the black. So that can be, you guys can use pen and pencil if you want combined together, or pen and marker if you have any other mediums you'd like to use just to get some different values in there. Yeah, good silhouette shape on this house here. That looks good. Cool, so it looks like you guys are getting the idea of that. Just being able to get that variety of different options. So I would go through these, and that's usually where I'll start. I'll start with a rule of thirds and a symmetrical, and that's just an easy way for me to get started on those compositions and just kind of get the ideas rolling as you go through that. All right, so use that as you start to sketch for that. I want to just show you guys where that next assignment is in Canvas. So here we are just under the assignment section of this. So home, what does the home look like? Well, let me go to student view so it'll kind of look like how you guys see it. So it'll look like this for your home when you just click on our class. And if you go to assignments, where is it? All right, see, it's not there. Oh, here it is, thumbnail critique. It is here, upcoming assignments. So it has it here due April 27th at 11:59. So I gotta change that time. I gotta make sure it's due right before class. So I'll have it due at 10 a.m. But there it is. So you'll just click on that and submit your work that way. Let me change this. And yeah, right now, it's just worth 10 points, but all these will just, let's just change this to 5 points for the first one. 5 points for the first one, and they'll all be worth about 5 to 10 points. It's April 27th, Monday, yes. And we want this to be due at 10 a.m. So that's what we'll be doing on Monday. We'll just be looking at your guys' thumbnail sketches, giving you feedback. It will be a good chance for you to ask questions, make sure you're doing everything right. Kind of hopefully just getting a chunk of the work done on the project so you don't get caught too far behind. And we'll use that as a way to kind of do these virtual critiques. So normally if we were in class, I would have you guys get in like small groups of 5 people and share your work that way amongst each other. But we'll just do it all together as a group, so you guys will be able to offer up any feedback. I'll like ask you guys which one has the clearest focal point of each other's work. And then hopefully you will be able to see if your focal points are clear, if you're getting a variety of different compositions, things like that. And I'll take some of them and I'll sketch over them to make some changes as well, depending on the needs of the different compositions. See something in the chat here. Abraham, you can do that to start, so you can use that for a few of your ideas. Abraham was asking, can you use like famous paintings as inspiration for thumbnail sketches? And yeah, you can do that for a few of them where you look and see where the artist put the focal point, how the artist used leading lines. And then use that just to get the idea rolling for a few of them. Don't do all of your sketches directly based on other works of art, but you can do that kind of for a few of them to get some inspiration and get ideas rolling. It's a good question, Abraham. Any other questions before we sign off today? All right, so just get those thumbnails in before our Zoom meeting on Monday. That's what we'll be doing on Monday, is just doing those critiques, looking at each other's work, getting ideas, getting inspiration, and we'll go from there. If anyone has questions over the weekend or later today, just send me a message. And that'll be it for today. So have a good one, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day. Make sure everyone's signed in on the chat for attendance too before you go.
Professor, so I actually was having internet problems with my laptop 2 minutes before class started. So I missed the first 3 minutes. What was the thumbnail project you were talking about?
Oh, it's just going to be due on Monday. So these are going to be very like mini assignments through Canvas, where it's just it'll end up being part of your guys' participation grade. So right now I have it as just worth 5 points. So they'll all be worth like 5 or 10 points, but it's basically me being able to see your work before you turn it in and give you feedback. We'll be asking the rest of the class for feedback on your guys' projects, giving critiques and getting suggestions on how to move forward. So you need to so these will be thumbnails that you can use for the next project, but it'll all be focused around creating that good clear focal point using leading lines, simple shapes, and rule of thirds and symmetrical compositions.
Okay. So when it says project one, it's just talking about the first thumbnail project, not project one as in last actual project.
No, that project. No, not that one. Yeah. Where is?
Okay.
Where did
I was like, oh, were we supposed to draw thumbnails for last project?
No. Yeah, we're just getting started on what will be. This is just kind of working ahead on project 2, basically.
Okay. All right.
Yep. And it's here. It's this one called Project 1. Project 1. Yeah. See, I gotta change that to project.
I was like, oh, was I supposed to take notes on the
There we
project?
go. Okay, that makes sense. Your confusion now. There we go. Project 2 thumbnail critiques. I'm losing track. I got so many classes going on. Everything's online.
Everything's chaotic.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, we got that cleared up.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Professor.
Yep. Have a good one.
You too. Stay safe.
Bye.